to Wales twice. And each time I went, I visited this wonderful place called TINTERN Abbey. And just recently, I've been taking painting classes, and I just finished this painting of TINTERN Abbey. And I was enchanted by the place, of course. What's interesting about this painting is each time I stood in the same place and took a picture. What's fascinating is that the second time I went, lo and behold, there was a sister, a nun, walking through. It was like a magical moment where time stood still and went back. Yeah. So, I don't know if any of you paint, but what's interesting about painting is that sometimes you actually go right into the painting. Suddenly you find yourself, you're not just painting, but you're there. It was a fascinating experience painting TINTERN Abbey, and it was just a beautiful moment to be there. Yeah. So, I wanted to look up a little bit about TINTERN Abbey and just share a few thoughts. A little of its history, which is fascinating. It was actually founded in May of 1131 by a Walter de Clare, the Lord of Chepstow in Wales. And it's situated adjacent to the village of Tintern in Monmouthshire on the Welsh bank of the River Wye, which forms the border between Monmouthshire in Wales and Gloucestershire in England. It was the first Cistercian church, abbey, and which is a Catholic religious order, and only the second in all of Britain. So this is a very monumental moment when this was created. The community followed the rule of St. Benedict, which dates back to the 6th century. Today it's considered one of the greatest monastic ruins of Wales. Maybe many of you have been there. In the year after its foundation, the abbey prospered with endowments from Gloucestershire and Gwent. And one benefactor particularly generous, Roger Bigod III, he was the man who undertook much of the rebuilding of the abbey in the 13th century, and he is actually enshrined in a coat of arms in one of the eastern windows of the church. There were probably less than about 400 monks at the time in the monastery at any particular time, and all worshiping and carrying out good deeds for the immediate community. But the Black Death hit the country in 1349, and the monks of Tintern, as those throughout Britain, suffered terribly, and many died as they tended to those who were sick. And then the abbey fell into ruin, of course, as we all know, with a dissolution of the monasteries, sometimes referred to as the suppression of the monasteries, between 1536 and 1541, when Henry VIII disbanded monasteries and convents and friaries in England, Wales, and Ireland, following his break from Rome. He appropriated their income and disposed of their assets, and many former monastic property was sold off to fund his military campaigns in the 1540s. At that time, there were probably around 900 religious houses in Britain, maybe about, they estimated about 12,000 people in all, monks, nuns, sisters, canons, friars, and they estimated about one adult man in 50 at that time was in a religious order. That's a lot. And it was only in the late 18th century that the place began to find popularity with tourists and visitors, and its remains have been celebrated in poetry and painting from the 18th century. Artists like Turner and Gainsborough, there's some absolutely magnificent paintings if you want to look up some of the paintings on Tintern Abbey. Poets such as Wordsworth, who wrote a romantic poem about the landscape entitled Lines Composed a Few Miles Above Tintern Abbey on revisiting the banks of the Wye. But I wanted to read just a precious little part of a poem that I just loved, which I felt captured the romantic lure of Tintern, written in the late 1700s. It's called Written in Tintern Abbey. It says, admiring stranger, that with lingering feet, enchained by wonder, pauses on this green, where they in raptured sight the dark woods meet. Ah, rest a while and contemplate the scene. Those hoary pillars clasped by ivory round, this hallowed floor by holy footsteps trod, the moldering choir by spreading moss, embrowned where fasting saints devoutly hymned their God. Lord Tennyson also wrote Tears, Idle Tears during a visit. And then by the middle of the 19th century, the Old Abbey was one of the most popular tourist spots on the Welsh border. By 1901, the Abbey was bought by the Crown from the Duke of Beaufort, and it was recognized as a monument of national importance. After this, many repairs and maintenance has been done on the ruins. Tintern Abbey is now in the care of Cadw since 1984, the Welsh government's Historic Environment Service. And it is still magnificent. It's a magical place to visit. And they estimate about 70,000 people visit there a year. So I'd like to sing or keep a welcome in remembrance of Wales, and please join in, whoever knows the song. Far away a voice is calling, bells of memory chime. Come home again, come home again. They call through the oceans of time. We'll keep a welcome in the hillside. We'll keep a welcome in the vales. This land is old and still be singing when you come home again to Wales. This land of song will keep a welcome with the love that never fails. We'll kiss away each hour here when you come home again to Wales. We'll kiss away in the hillside. We'll keep a welcome in the vales. This land will still be singing when you come home again to Wales. This land of song will keep a welcome, and with a love that never fails, we'll kiss away each hour of the earth
kiss away each other.